have two great brains, so they count for double.
No, one.
No.
Mine is very small, like a chicken.
Dr. Claassen, does the size of the brain matter?
Not only the size. It's more about the connections and the complexity.
Well, hello, everyone. I hope you had a great break for lunch and that you have a full and happy stomach. Let's talk about the brain there for a second. When I woke up this morning, I made sure I knew I was going to talk about. I have with me on stage an esteemed neurologist and researcher from Columbia University, Dr. Jan Claassen, and Jean Reno, who needs no introduction, an actor.
A little one.
An actor, the Big Blue, Nikita, Leon, Mission Impossible, the Pink Panther, Running.
Stop down, not too much.
No, I like the Da Vinci Code.
Really?
Yeah.
I like Tom Hanks more than the Da Vinci Code.
Well, you worked with great directors, Ron Howard,
yeah.
the Da Vinci Code, Luc Besson, Roberto Benigni.
Ah, Benigni.
Brian De Palma. Luc Besson, maybe 1 or 2 movies?
5, I guess.
5?
Yeah.
You also did sing, I believe, with Johnny Hallyday?
Johnny Hallyday. I think of him every day. He was a fantastic man.
Yeah.
A good friend of mine, very generous, very talented. I don't know the size of the brain, but I know the size of the heart.
Of the heart,
yeah.
Jean Reno is also an author, by the way. He just published a best-selling novel called Emma.
Emma,
That's
yes.
new for you, writing.
Yes, completely. I had that story in my mind, my brain, for years. And so with the COVID, I was at home and I thought my life is finished. Movies will be finished for me. So I decided to write a book, yes.
But you also have been, for the last 15 years, the ambassador of an incredible institution or institute in Paris called the Paris Brain
More than
Institute.
15 years.
It did open 2010, but it was created a little bit before.
Ah, okay, thank you. Thank you.
Just talking about memory. Huh?
Really?
Yeah?
It is, okay. You know,
But
the actors.
well, with both of you, two experts on the brain, I had to do some research. So I did. I did actually do the research thanks to AI. And so here is what ChatGPT told me to share with you. The brain is the central organ of the nervous system in humans and many other animals. Obviously, not all of them. It is responsible for processing sensory information, controlling movement, regulating bodily functions, and enabling higher cognitive functions like thinking, memory, and emotions. Now, I know a lot of you in this audience love figures. You like good numbers. So here's what ChatGPT asked me to tell you. The human brain is estimated to contain about 86 billion neurons and roughly the same number, if not more, of glial cells. Dr. Claassen, what are the glial cells?
That's a great question. Everybody always talks about the neurons. That's what we think of when we think of the brain. That's where the electrical activity is transmitted, some chemical processes, and that's sort of what the thinking, basically, of the brain supports. But the glial cells are basically the support system. It's like it helps the brain cells, the neurons, actually to function. So you cannot underestimate them. They're crucially important. For a long time, neurologists, neuroscientists were focusing only on the neurons. That's what everybody just talked about and forgot about these support systems. And they are at least as important. So often now, when we think about how can we modulate brain function, we actually think about the glial cells.
And so we are very rich, huh? 86 billion of glial cells.
Yeah, we're very rich, but actually when disease hits you, for example, in a stroke, you lose millions of neurons actually every minute that before you start an intervention. So for example, now we can do interventions for some of the diseases. If you have a stroke, if you have a little clot going into your vessel, into the brain, if you detect that early enough, you can pull it out again, and you can sort of make that brain survive. But every minute that you do this later, you lose millions of neurons. Well, we start with a large number, some of us more than others, but yeah.
And hence the topic of our conversation. We know so little about the brain. Where are we with brain research compared to other organs in terms of research and knowledge?
It's probably the most exciting time to be in brain research right now. There's been work on the brain for hundreds of years. There's very famous neurologists, actually the Paris Brain Institute, Paris played a big role in that, actually. Famous neurologists, neuroscientists, Charcot, many of them were actually in Paris. And so there has been a lot of work, but the brain you have to think about, it's sort of hidden underneath, right? And we'll talk a bit about hidden things actually in science. But the brain, we don't have direct access to. So like the eyes, we can actually directly observe. So for a long time, it's been difficult to study it. With technological developments, imaging, electrophysiological techniques, we now have a window into the living brain. Before, it was usually after the person died, we could examine it in great detail, but the living brain was always a mystery. But with digital revolution, actually, this has been an enormous opportunity. So the advancement, if you think about, you've talked about figures, right? It's not a linear curve. It's really exponential at the moment, what we're starting to find out and are able now, for the longest time in neurology, it was all about talking very in a fancy way and making a diagnosis, but you couldn't really help most patients. Now we can actually help patients a lot of the times.
And the Paris Brain Institute did play a big role with this, or is playing a big role with this. Jean, you and your friends, a couple of friends more than 15 years ago, then you decided all to help 3 professors launch this place.
When you see him, I mean, for me, he's a genius. His heart is 10 times bigger than mine because he searched for me. He searched to find for me. And I say bravo to you every day, and I mean it. And yeah, you can. And that's why I'm here, because people like him dedicate their life for us. I mean, and we're very proud to be here because now we work for the Americans and with the Americans, which is fantastic because we exchange information and we can go further, you know, if you follow me. I'm here only because of the women and the men who start the Brain Institute, because we need people like that. I mean, I have a good life. I have a fantastic family. My son is over there. I have a fantastic family. I'm happy. I'm not too here. I'm old, but that's okay. So I dedicate my life to other people. Otherwise, I cannot sleep.
You know what, Jean?
Yes.
Let's watch a short video and see what you have been able to help create.
Can I go after that?
Yes. We have 1 or 2 more questions for you.
Bienvenue à l'Institut du cerveau. Implanté au cœur de l'hôpital universitaire de la Pitié-Salpêtrière, l'Institut du cerveau est un centre de recherche scientifique et médicale entièrement dédié à l'étude du cerveau et aux maladies qui lui sont associées. Lieu ouvert aux chercheurs du monde entier, l'Institut du cerveau accueille également les patients, mais aussi le grand public, qui peuvent assister tout au long de l'année à un grand nombre de conférences et d'événements. L'Institut du cerveau rassemble une grande diversité d'experts, étudiants, biologistes, chercheurs, cliniciens, ingénieurs, spécialistes en imagerie médicale, mathématiciens, informaticiens, spécialistes de la data. Ensemble, ils concourent à parts égales à la découverte des traitements de demain. L'innovation technologique est également au cœur du modèle de l'Institut du cerveau. IRM de dernière génération, scanner haut débit, plateforme de marche. Les chercheurs de l'Institut du cerveau ont ainsi accès aux meilleurs équipements pour mener à bien leurs travaux. L'Institut du cerveau dispose par exemple d'un des 5 magnétoencéphalographes disponibles en France, un outil indispensable permettant la mesure des champs magnétiques induits par l'activité électrique des neurones. Avec ses 22 000 mètres carrés de laboratoire, 1200 mètres carrés dédiés à la recherche clinique et 1000 mètres carrés affectés à l'incubation de start-up, l'Institut du cerveau réunit en un même lieu plus de 700 experts du cerveau provenant du monde entier, qui collaborent depuis le laboratoire jusqu'au lit du patient pour comprendre le fonctionnement du cerveau et améliorer la santé de toutes et tous. Et vous, qu'attendez-vous pour découvrir l'Institut du cerveau ?
New since this video, Jean, is that the Paris Brain Institute launched in the United States the Paris Brain Institute America, which is going to help fund specific research projects between American institutions such as Columbia University, Harvard. There are others with Yale, another one with McGill. How important, and this Paris Brain Institute America, by the way, is chaired by Martina Soulin, who is with us today, and your wife, Zofia, is on the board along with Mathilde Coste. Why is it so important to involve Americans as well and to be present in America to you who has been part of this organization since the beginning?
Because they have people like him. They have genius here. And I mean, we're a small country in France, and we need big countries like America, because America can open more and more, can take us by the hand and follow the road. Yes, we need to be together, exchange information, and work together. Yes, we need people, you know, clever people, of course.
And we need people to support it.
Oh, bien sûr, absolutely.
And so you asked me before the session if we could do it. By the way, there is a barcode on that picture where you can become part of this adventure, this journey. This journey, Dr. Claassen, takes you to something called consciousness mapping. You were on the cover of Columbia magazine a few weeks ago. You talk about hidden minds. What is consciousness mapping, this project you are co-leading with the Paris Brain Institute?
Yeah, I've been collaborating with colleagues, friends at the Paris Brain Institute for the past decade, and I wouldn't say anybody takes anybody else by the hand. I think it's actually we all take each other by the hand, and together we're stronger. We actually really, there's fantastic scientists' minds in Paris, there's good people here, and this is like one of the strengths, if you really want to go make fundamental discoveries, is collaboration. Nobody can do this by themselves for many reasons. We all have special expertise. We have access to different patient populations. If you want to generalize findings, it's important to look at this in different populations. We came up with, so my lab is interested in consciousness. So I'm trying to figure out what consciousness is. And I'm an intensivist, so my clinical work is in the intensive care unit. So I have a lot of patients with disorders of consciousness. And for many years, I've always been standing there at the bedside and wondering when somebody was not responsive, whether they're truly not conscious. And triggered by often when you talk to families often said, I think my mom is in there. There's something there. And I also had this weird feeling. And you know, there's this like, as a scientist, what you cannot prove and cannot sort of calculate, you brush off and you ignore. And so we developed a project where we are looking at the electrical activity of the brain and looking at imaging, and we were able to show that every fourth patient that looks like they're unresponsive, they're actually conscious. They can actually hear you. And so together with my friends in Paris, we came up with this idea of trying to map consciousness, trying to understand, once you know that phenomenon is there, we showed also that it correlates with outcomes, so those patients that have this activation actually have a higher chance to recover. But then you're trying to figure out, why don't they just respond, right? If they're conscious and you ask them, let's say, you ask them, show me 2 fingers, why don't they do it? You can see that the brain understands it. You can see that actually they could do it. They're not paralyzed. They can actually move their arms, but they're not doing it. So what's that? Where's basically the wiring broken? And then why is it important to figure that out? Why do we need to develop this map of the brain to understand what's going on? Because if we understand that map, we can also treat that, and we can develop treatments. So as I said earlier, our specialty neuroscience has moved from a more observational specialty to one that is focused primarily on treating, on trying to help some patients recover. And I can tell you, I've been in this neuro field for like 25 years. It's been a revolution already. I mean, people that initially we couldn't help, where we could just sit there, look at them, talk very fancily about them. Now we can actually do something. We can pull clots out, we can treat with medications, and I think this is only the tip of the iceberg. This is only the beginning. I mean, if you see the the speed at which, and I think maybe we'll talk about it later, the speed at which the digital revolution is happening, that all impacts also the scientific revolution, and it will fundamentally change everything.
But let's go. How does AI help you? Jean, please.
Our mission is very important. I forget something. Our mission is very important, and we need you. We need you to continue. You see, when he speaks, I understand everything. And I understand how big is the mission and how devoted he is to the mission. We need you.
And this covers, no, absolutely, and this covers everything. Here it's the consciousness mapping. Tomorrow it's about Parkinson and degenerative disease. It could be about memory. Memory is key to your work. It could be fatigue. I guess a lot of you in your companies, you deal with the fatigue of people working with you, or your own fatigue. Those can find explanation in the brain. Mental health issue, depression. There is so much to discover.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's going to benefit all of us.
Yeah.
What can we do to invest into the health of our brain? How can I protect my brain better? Is there something to do?
Stay home.
Stay home? Sleep?
Stay home.
Should we sleep?
So I mean, all the usual stuff, right? Eating well and exercising, all of that makes a lot of sense. I'm not sure about crossword puzzles. But what clearly is not good is what I did last night. I gave a talk yesterday in San Diego and took a red eye over here. That is not good. So good, healthy sleep, not in like, in an airplane. That's probably one of the things that increasingly has been linked to better longevity and brain health. It's like, and doctors and I think people in finance as well are notoriously bad about that. We overestimate how little sleep we need. I always said it's almost bragging, right? I only need 5 hours sleep. That's probably not true. That's probably not true, even if we think so. So healthy sleep, a good sleep hygiene when you go to bed is probably one of the biggest things you can do.
So first investment, sleep more. You'll be more productive. Although when we listen to you, and you just flew on a red eye from California, you seem pretty clear to me. And then invest into brain research. I think about the pandemic. We found a vaccine quite fast, but the research did not start at the beginning of the pandemic. It was the results of the work of dozens, hundreds of scientists, and the investments of billions of dollars into research for decades. Is that what we're talking about as well when we talk about the brain? Investing for the future?
Absolutely, and I think this is a really good example because all of this fundamental research that had been done for the rapid sequencing that allowed vaccines to be developed within a year, it's unprecedented. I mean, there's good and bad things about it, but it's unbelievable how quickly a vaccine was developed against something that didn't exist before, a year before, right? And obviously that wasn't just research that happened that year. There were decades of research, and in some way, the pandemic came at a terrible time because the pandemic is always a terrible time, but scientifically, it was actually ready for a vaccine to be developed then. So it's totally true.
Last question, we talked about AI. How is AI going to transform brain research?
Completely. So, I told you a little bit about, that was actually my talk yesterday in San Diego, was about also AI, how it influences and how we can utilize this. And it's very interesting if you think about this patient that I described earlier that looks completely unresponsive, but inside they're conscious. There's ways that we think that we can start communicating with them, and that's by AI. So There's, for example, in patients with ALS, this is a degenerative disease of the nervous system. In the later stages, patients cannot move anything at all. So they're sort of, in some ways, you could say, locked in their body. There's AI-supported tools that detect the brain activity that allow speech generation just by the person thinking about it. So we built actually, this is called a brain-computer interface. And we build a brain-computer interface, are in the development stages of that, to see whether maybe one of those patients that is in this locked-in state could actually articulate what they feel, what they want to be done. And this is, it sounds very science fiction-y, but it is, I think it's possible in our lifetime to do that.
So, you know what, let's dare, our time is almost up, let's dare to invest in human intelligence. You, the scientist, share your knowledge and care for more people. Some of you might wonder why I'm wearing a t-shirt. This represents the state of mind of one of us. His name is Olivier Gois. A lot of you know him. He's a super successful entrepreneur. Everything in his life was picture perfect until a doctor at the Paris Brain Institute woke him up to tell him he was suffering from Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS. And Olivier understood right away that there was no cure. Since then, Olivier and his friends have become invincible and raised millions for brain research and the Paris Brain Institute. Actually, you know what, Jean? What? I wanted to give you his book. It just came out in France before. It's called Invincible. And I invite you to join Olivier and to all become invincible to support Yann research through the Paris Brain Institute America, Jean's work. And you know what, Yann, to thank you for taking the red eye. I don't know whether you read in French, but you might learn or use some AI in Jean Reno's book. And I've always wanted to do that, you know, play a little bit like, let me give you those two books.
I will translate it for you.
Let's all be invincible. Thank you very much for being here.
I'll come home and I will read for you.
Thank you.
I know her.
Thank you.
She's a very good journalist. Fantastic.
Thank you very much.
I understood everything you said.
You see?
Yes.
Thanks
now,
to AI.
I'm going to write a check for you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Do it for the Paris Brain Institute America. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.